So let's talk about one of the biggest questions out there. A question that we all ask ourselves, whether we're an engineer, a doctor, or just, looking suspiciously at that old washing machine in the basement. When is it gonna fail? It's really the ultimate question of prediction.
When will it happen? That little word "it" is the big unknown, isn't it? And it's a question that drives pretty much everything, from our own day-to-day worries to billion-dollar business decisions. It really sits at the very heart of risk, reliability, and honestly, progress itself.
For a lot of us, the question feels really personal and super immediate. When is my car's engine finally going to give up? Knowing the answer to that could be the difference between a simple, planned trip to the mechanic and a very, very expensive tow.
But then, the stakes get so much higher. What about questions like, when might a patient's cancer come back? Or, how long will a new heart valve actually last? In medicine, finding the answer isn't about convenience. It's literally about life and death. And we can zoom out even further than that. When will a critical piece of a city's power grid fail? Or when will a bridge's support structure start to weaken? We're talking about huge, complex systems where predicting failure is absolutely essential to keeping our world running safely. So the real question is, how do we get from just anxious guessing to actual scientific prediction?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into. First, we'll look at the whole framework for making these predictions. Then we'll talk about the special kind of data you need. After that, we'll open up the statisticians' toolkit to see the models they use. And finally, we'll see the huge real-world impact that all of this has.
All right, let's jump right in. How do scientists and statisticians actually formally answer that when question? Well, they don't have a crystal ball. What they do have is a powerful and kind of elegant statistical framework.
It's called failure time analysis. You might also hear it called survival analysis, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It is an entire branch of statistics that is completely dedicated to figuring out the expected time until some specific event happens.
Now, I know what you're thinking. The word failure sounds kind of negative, right? But in statistics, it's a totally neutral term. A failure is just whatever event we're interested in measuring. So yeah, it could be a machine part breaking down, but it could also be a patient relapsing or even a customer just deciding to cancel their Netflix subscription. It's whatever endpoint you want to predict.
Okay, so if we want to predict when something's going to happen, what kind of clues do we actually need? This brings us to the really unique kind of data that makes this whole field of analysis possible.
But here's the biggest hurdle. In the real world, you almost never get the complete story for everything you're studying. A research study has to end at some point, right? People move away. Sometimes parts get replaced before they even have a chance to fail. So what do you do with all that incomplete information?
The statistical solution is this incredibly clever concept called censoring. And this is so important. Censoring is not bad data. It's not a mistake. Think of it this way. It's like you're timing a race, but you have to stop the clock before everyone has crossed the finish line. You don't know their final times, but you do know they ran for at least that long. That partial info is still super valuable, and censoring is the method we use to include it.
This timeline right here is the perfect way to see censoring in action. Let's just walk through this little hypothetical study. So it starts at time 0. At 6 months, patient A has a relapse. Boom, that's our failure event. Then at month 12, patient B moves away. We have no idea what happens to them after that, so their data is censored. All we know for sure is that they were relapse-free for 12 months. Moving on, at month 18, patient C has a relapse. And finally, at month 24, the study just ends. Patient D is still doing perfectly fine, but since the study is over, their data is also censored. We know they made it the full 24 months without a relapse. Failure time analysis is built specifically to use all of this info, the actual failures and the censored data, to build a really accurate picture.
So, we've got this unique data. How do we actually analyze it? Well, this is where statisticians get to open up their toolkit, and it is packed with powerful models designed for exactly this kind of problem.
One of the real classics is something called Weibull analysis. This model is amazing because it's so flexible. It's designed to figure out how the risk of failure is changing over time. Is the risk going up, like a car part that's wearing out, or is the risk actually going down, like someone recovering after a major surgery? The Weibull model is perfect for capturing that kind of dynamic change. Then you've got accelerated failure time models, or AFT models for short, and these are fantastic for comparing different groups. They help us answer by how much a certain factor, say a new medicine or maybe a stronger building material, actually speeds up or slows down the time until something fails.
It lets us put a real number on the impact.
And the toolkit gets even more specialized from there. There's trend analysis, which helps you see if your product's reliability is getting better with each new version. There are competing risks models for situations where there are multiple ways something can fail, like did a patient die from cancer or from a totally unrelated heart attack. And then there are these really powerful regression models that can untangle how dozens of different factors, like age, diet, where you live, all work together to influence the time to an event.
So we've got the theory, we've got the data, and we've got the tools. But what does it all really mean out in the real world? This, to me, is where it gets incredibly exciting. Because the impact of being able to predict failure is, well, it's world-changing.
And what's just wild is how many different fields this applies to. In engineering, it's all about reliability, predicting the perfect time to swap out a jet engine part to keep people safe without wasting money. In biomedical research, it is the absolute gold standard for clinical trials, proving whether a new drug really helps patients live longer. It even helps public health officials figure out things like how long immunity from a new vaccine is likely to last in the population.
Let's make this crystal clear. Picture a clinical trial for a new cancer drug. So, on the left, you see the survival rate for patients who got the standard treatment. But look at the right. For patients on the new drug, that bar is clearly, significantly higher. Failure time analysis is the tool that allows us to prove with statistical certainty that that difference is real.
And, a difference on a chart isn't just an abstract statistic. It translates into this. That statistical proof can lead to a new drug getting approved, which could mean an extra 15,000 lives saved every single year. That is the human side of getting the math right.
And that really gets to the core of why this matters so much. The goal of all this analysis isn't just to be a fortune teller, to just predict what's going to happen. The goal is to get the wisdom and the insight we need to step in and actually change the future for the better. Which leaves us with one final, and I think really important question. As our ability to predict these kinds of events gets better and better, what's our responsibility to actually act on that knowledge? It's a huge question, and it stretches all the way from an engineer's workshop to the biggest questions of public policy.
And on that thought, that's all for today. If you found this interesting, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We really do love hearing from you, so let us know in the comments what you want us to break down next. Thanks for tuning in.